Certified Financial Planner is an innovative, comprehensive, informative, and cutting-edge podcast that discusses financial topics ranging from personal finance, economics, politics, and personal growth. Simply Financial will cover intriguing and thought-provoking questions so that the listener can simply increase their financial IQ.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode number 2 of the Simply Financial podcast. Today, I have with me a special guest, Katherine Dumeer. The topic is a millennial in transition. I've known Katie for a few years now. I know her extended family, including her brother, her mom and dad. We're actually very good friends. She's a program manager for the Stanton Foundation in Boston. She moved to Boston a short time ago, I guess a little longer than that now. We're going to touch a little bit about that. But if you've listened to the Simply Financial podcast over these last couple of episodes, we've explored millennials quite a bit. We had Marsha LaRue on. She is a career coach and talked a lot about millennials. We had on some other friends of mine that are millennials who are expecting their first baby. And so Katie kind of fits into this theme that we've been doing. And I think she has a wonderful approach and thought about millennials. And it's going to be great exploring some of the key things she has going on in her life, especially as it relates to money and wealth. So, Kate, thank you very much for joining me.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yes. So we've talked a lot, actually, before we even started recording. Mm-hmm. So hopefully the conversation is dynamic as it was before we actually clicked the on button. But, before we started recording, we talked a little bit about the reputation of millennials. You're a millennial?
Yep.
What do you think about the reputation of millennials, and how are you the same as millennials?
So I think the word millennial is used today as a dirty word. Like, people say, I'm a millennial, but. And there's always a but. It's never, I'm a millennial and I'm so proud of it. What are you? It's, I'm a millennial, but I'm different because of X, Y, and Z. So I think people generally have a negative. When you say millennial, it's negative. That said, I think that millennials have both positive and probably not so positive characteristics that are typical of the class. I'm probably like a millennial in that I use technology. I'm more comfortable using technology than a lot of others who are older than me. And I use it every day to do things from talk to people to bank to transfer money to, listen to music, right?
Sure.
I use
and you're quick to adopt technology also, right? It's not just what you knew 5-10 years ago. If there's a new technology, you're probably fairly quick to embrace it and adopt it.
Well, part of that is because my fiance's in IT, right? So he loves the new tech gadgets. Mm-hmm. He brings home God knows what to grow basil in the house and have the Alexa in every room and all that noise. I call them like who's it, what's it, and zip zaps, and I don't know what they are. But yes, I have them all, and it's easy for me to learn how to use them. And I'm okay. I'm comfortable using them. I'm not fearful of them. I don't put them in a cage in the corner of the room. And so that, I think, is very typical of a millennial, right?
Yeah,
and I start adopting that into my everyday life. But I'm not the millennial who's glued to my phone at dinner because I'd rather talk to people who weren't there than talk to the people across the table from me. So I think that that's the way that I'm different, is that I know when to I don't want to say shut it off. I know when to act like an adult. I guess that means that I'm saying that millennials aren't adults. But you see what I'm saying.
But you know that technology has a place in your world, and you could leverage it and you could use it, but it's not all encompassing. And there's a way to use it in a professional capacity. Right. It's today it's professional to check a phone fast and put it away, or excuse yourself to make a phone call or something. Like, there's a way to professionally do it and respectfully do it, and there's a way to not respectfully do it. Okay, but you said most people, when they say I'm a millennial, but, so what is your but?
I think if I had to say it succinctly, it's that for how old I am, I think I have my life as together as I can, right? I have a good job that I'm happy with, that I feel comfortable in. I'm getting married in a year. I have a savings account. I don't rely on my parents financially. I pay my own bills. Like, I feel like when you think of a millennial, you think of the kid who lives in his mom's basement until he's 45, right?
Right.
And that's not me. I pride myself on being independent and having my own life. And I feel like that's the difference, is that I don't rely on others. I feel comfortable being independent and making my own way.
Okay. So you went to undergrad in Rhode Island at Roger Williams. You got your law degree from the University of Virginia.
Yep.
And so you must hang around and know lots of millennials. How many millennials do you hang around with in your large network? Not just your best friends, but your large network mostly fit the definition of millennials, this unfavorable impression that kind of bangs around the public consistently.
Yeah, so I think that the people I hang around with more are people who I went to law school with, and that's just because it's a fresher experience for me. So those are the people who knew me closest to the age I am now, so we have the most in common, And so I would say that those people are all working professionally. They're more like me than like the millennial.
Okay.
I'm putting air quotes in.
Right. You can't see that on the podcast, but she's doing air quotes.
Than the millennial stereotype you hear about like I said, the 45-year-old in the basement. But that might also be a self-selecting thing because they chose to go to law school. And so they knew they wanted to work in the law, and they, for the most part, got jobs at law firms after they graduated. And there are a couple of anomalies here and there, but I would say that's the trend of the friends that I have.
So you're engaged?
Yeah.
Right, Kyle?
Yep.
So he's from the Midwest.
Yep.
So he grew up in a different area that you grew up in. You grew up in Connecticut and have stayed mostly, if not exclusively, on the Eastern Seaboard, right?
Yep.
So he's from the Midwest, and there's this traditional Midwest values kind of thought process. So is Kyle a millennial in the worst sense of the definition, or what's Kyle's I'm a millennial but?
No, so Kyle is also, as I mentioned, he's an IT guy, so he's big into tech, and that's a big part of his life. And he spends a lot of his I think that a difference between Kyle and me is that he spends a lot of his free time engaging in tech, playing games or whatever, and I don't. I use tech for stuff that I think makes my life easier or makes me more efficient as a human being. But he uses it more for enjoyment, entertainment, and so maybe he's on his phone more than I am, or on the computer more than I am, because he uses it as an entertainment tool. I don't. But so that's, I guess, how he's like a millennial, which doesn't exactly answer your question. But his but is probably that I've never known somebody who can just put his nose down and work. Like
so it's the work ethic.
He had no issue picking up and moving to a new city. He moved from Indiana to Boston, and he said, I'm going to find a job, I'm going to work, I'm going to make my way. And he had no safety net. He had no family in Boston, nobody who, if he failed finding a job or whatever, could support him. And he still had the stomach to go out and do it, and is still there 2 years later.
When he moved from Indiana to Boston, not only everything he said, but he was also changing industries. Is that right?
Yeah. So he taught science at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science in Indiana. And full disclosure, moved to Boston because he was in a relationship with a girl who was going to Tufts.
Okay.
Getting a dental degree at Tufts. Wanted to be closer to her. Moved out.
I see. Okay.
Moved out to Boston. And there were a lot of hoops to jump through to get a teaching certification in Boston that he didn't have to jump through in Indiana. So he couldn't teach for the first year because he couldn't get all the certifications in time to teach. So he moved and started a job in IT because that's what he could get. And he liked computers. He liked IT. And so that's why he moved. But I think what I respect most about it is obviously the relationship ended. He's not still with her, turns out.
I would hope so. Yes,
but he stayed, and he said, "I'm not going to go back to Indiana. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to move back home. This is my new hometown. I'm going to make it my own. It's going to
in a new city, new industry,
new city, new industry,
and with a failed relationship or a relationship that ended. So that's pure American dream kind of stuff. But that's also not too dissimilar for you, right? Because you went to University of Virginia for law school. And then out of law school, what was your first job out of law school?
I worked for a large firm in D.C. as an associate attorney.
Okay. So that was the path you were on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you went to law school to do
That's why I went, yeah.
Is University of Virginia a good law school?
Yeah, it is. I like to think so.
Isn't it like top 10?
It is, yeah.
All right. You're being a little humble now.
I had a great experience, and I love Charlottesville, and I love UVA.
So the plan was to be a lawyer, to go to a top-tier law firm, high-powered job, work hard, I assume make a lot of money. Is partnership something you think about?
I didn't really know. I guess I went to law school not having worked in a big law firm before. Some people go to law school after having been paralegals or support staff in a big firm, see the lifestyle, say, I want that, and then do it. I didn't do that. I went straight from undergrad to law school, and so I didn't have that experience. So I knew I wanted to be a lawyer because I like what lawyers do. Okay. I like thinking critically. I like writing argument. I like writing generally. And so I knew I liked what lawyers did. And so everyone that I knew was applying for big firm jobs out of law school, and so that's what I did too. That was the easiest path out of law school, thinking I'll see what it's like and I'll go from there. That was the plan.
Okay. So then you changed plans.
I did.
So I'm sure there's lots that goes into it, but the short story is you decided to leave that job.
Yep.
And to leave that city.
Yep.
And you went to Boston.
Yep.
Kind of like Kyle. You didn't really have ties to Boston. It's closer to Connecticut than Virginia is. Yeah. And you got a different job, somewhat unrelated to the pure attorney in a law firm kind of thing, right?
Yep.
So walk us through that decision-making, especially a little bit on the money side of picking up and moving and leaving the law career that you had prepared for. Not that you probably still draw on.
Yeah, of course. I do every day.
But it's a little different.
But it's certainly different. So I guess...
So walk us through that, yeah.
So I got to the firm, and I met really great human beings, and I liked the people I worked with. But when I looked around and I looked at what I was doing versus what fifth-year associates were doing versus what counsel were doing versus what partners were doing, I didn't see myself on that track in the way that I thought I might. I looked at I have a friend named Andrew who's an awesome guy, and he and I worked together on a lot of cases, and he was a fifth-year associate at the time, or a sixth-year associate. And I looked at the kind of jobs he was getting, the kind of projects he was asked to do, and I said, do I want to be doing that in 5 years or 6 years? And the answer was no.
Okay.
It was just such a time suck. And I talked to him a lot about this decision, and at the time he had 2 kids, one on the way. His wife was a stay-at-home mom. And he said to me, I talked to him a lot about what he liked and didn't like, and he was at the law firm because he made a lot of money. And because he could support a stay-at-home wife and 2 kids with one on the way, and in a pretty expensive city. And so what was keeping him in was the finances. And he encouraged me. He said, if you're thinking about leaving, do it before you get to my point, because there's a lot more that complicates this decision once you have a family and once you have kids, and it gets more complicated.
So you didn't know Andrew before. You met him on the job,
I met him on the job,
it was
yeah.
a new friendship / work relationship.
Yep.
So that's pretty impressive.
He's an awesome guy. He was an open book. He really, really fantastic. He's a huge Patriots fan, so he and I still talk every Sunday.
Well, we're not going to go there, but okay.
But he went to UVA undergrad, so we had that connection. So we immediately developed a friendship. But when I talked to him because we were on so many cases together and you work really long hours at the firm, you get really close to the people you're on the cases with pretty quickly. And we would talk, I would say, it doesn't look like you're, doing something you love here. And he's like, well, I like it. I would probably rather be doing something else, but he was doing
what he had to for his family and where he was.
And he developed a knowledge base that made it a good fit, and yeah.
And so you were looking there and thought that, although I'm sure you would have liked the money, it wouldn't have been fulfilling.
Well, I saw how much time, the most heartbreaking story that Andrew said that I said, I don't want that to be me, is that he was on a work trip visiting a client on his twin's first birthday and couldn't get out of it, had to go. And because the firm told him that he had to go. And that's just not something that I wanted to have. And it broke his heart. He's a family man. He's a great guy. And he didn't want that.
Sure.
And so I guess that was really what helped push me in that direction, was making that calculus. I didn't have anyone to take care of except for me at the time. Mm-hmm. And so when I looked